Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I remember the exact moment the air shifted, the kind of subtle change you don't notice at first, but feel somewhere deeper, like a quiet hum under your skin. It started with laughter, low and easy, echoing across the room as the four of us settled into what was supposed to be just another relaxed evening. Soft music played in the background, the lights dimmed just enough to blur edges and soften glances. Nothing unusual. Nothing planned. And yet, everything felt different. I lay stretched out on my stomach, absently tracing patterns against the fabric beneath me, too aware of every movement around me. My lingerie felt lighter than usual, like it carried a secret of its own. Across the room, she leaned into him, her laughter brushing against his shoulder, while his hand rested at her waist just a second longer than necessary. It wasn't obvious. Not something you'd call out. But it lingered. And I noticed. I wasn't supposed to notice. The chemistry had always been there, buried beneath polite smiles and friendly conversations. We were close, two couples who trusted each other, shared stories, shared dinners, shared the kind of comfort that made boundaries feel flexible. Still, there were lines. Unspoken ones. But that night, the lines felt thinner. My eyes drifted again, catching a moment I couldn't ignore, him standing behind her now, his arms wrapped around her just a little tighter than before. Not inappropriate. Not exactly. But intimate in a way that made my breath hitch, just slightly. I should have looked away. Instead, I stayed perfectly still. And then, I felt it. A presence behind me. Closer than expected. A shift in the air, in the space I thought was mine. My heartbeat slowed, then quickened, caught between hesitation and something else I wasn't ready to name. No one said a word. But everything was being said. The room seemed smaller, warmer, charged. And just as I started to turn, just as I thought I might break the silence, everything tipped. The silence didn't break all at once, it unraveled slowly, like a thread being pulled from something carefully held together. I shifted slightly, just enough to glance over my shoulder, and that's when I saw him. Not close enough to touch, not doing anything wrong, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence before our eyes even met. He gave a small, almost uncertain smile, like he wasn't sure if he should stay or step back. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, casual, but there was something underneath it. Something searching. I nodded, maybe a little too quickly. "Yeah, just comfortable here." Comfortable. The word felt strange as soon as I said it. Across the room, she leaned back against her partner, her head tilted slightly as she spoke. They looked effortless together, like they'd done this 100 times. But I knew better. We all did. None of this was routine. None of this was ordinary. We'd known each other for years. Late dinners that stretched into midnight conversations. Road trips where playlists became shared memories. There was always laughter, always a kind of closeness that felt rare and easy at the same time. But beneath that quiet, unnoticed, something had been building. Little things. The way conversations lingered just a second too long. The way glances were held, then quickly dropped. The way we all seemed aware of each other, even in silence. "You've been quiet tonight," he said, shifting slightly behind me, still keeping that careful distance. "Just thinking," I replied, my voice softer now. "Dangerous," he teased gently. I let out a small laugh, but it caught halfway. "Maybe." There was a pause, not awkward, not empty. Just full. I became aware of everything. The faint sound of music. The dim glow of the lamps. The quiet murmur of voices blending together. And the space between us, small, but charged. Behind me, I could sense him hesitate, like he was deciding something. Not acting, just considering. And somehow, that felt louder than anything else in the room. Across from us, her laughter softened into something quieter, more intimate. His hand rested at her side again, and this time, she didn't shift away. No one was pretending anymore. Not really. My fingers pressed lightly into the cushion beneath me as I exhaled slowly, my thoughts racing ahead of me, faster than I could catch them. This wasn't just comfort. This wasn't just familiarity. And as the room seemed to draw us all a little closer without anyone moving at all, I realized something I couldn't ignore. We were standing right at the edge of something we couldn't easily step back from. And someone was about to move first. The shift, when it came, wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quieter than that, almost invisible unless you were already paying attention. And I was. "You ever notice," he said behind me, his voice softer now, more thoughtful than before, "how some nights just feel different?" I didn't turn right away. My fingers traced the seam of the cushion again, slower this time. "Different how?" He paused, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Like something's about to happen. Not planned. Just inevitable." The word lingered between us. I finally glanced back at him, meeting his eyes fully this time. There was no teasing in his expression now. No easy humor. Just something steady and honest enough to make my chest tighten. "I think we all feel it," I admitted quietly. Across the room, as if on cue, her voice faded into a softer tone. She wasn't laughing anymore. She was watching him, the man she came with, but there was a question in her expression. Something searching. Something uncertain. And he noticed it too. That was the thing about us. We always noticed. We had history, real history. Not just shared moments, but shared trust. We'd been there for each other through breakups, job changes, long nights where conversations turned unexpectedly deep. There were things we knew about each other that no one else did. But with that kind of closeness came something else. Unasked questions. Unspoken curiosity. "What are you thinking?" he asked me, a little closer now, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence shift the air. I exhaled slowly. That maybe we crossed a line a long time ago, we just never said it out loud. He let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh, but not quite. "Yeah," he said. "I've thought that too." The honesty in that moment felt heavier than anything physical could have been. Behind us, a soft sound, her voice again, quieter now. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see her leaning back again, but this time her posture was different. Less casual. More aware. His hand rested at her side, but neither of them seemed distracted anymore. They were present. Just like we were. "This could get complicated," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It already is," he replied. That landed harder than I expected. Because he was right. This wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just a fleeting moment of curiosity. There were feelings layered underneath: loyalty, comfort, the kind of connection that didn't disappear easily. And maybe that was the real risk. Not what might happen, but what it might mean after. I shifted slightly, turning just a little more toward him now, closing the space by inches instead of steps. My heart was steady, but everything else felt uncertain. Across the room, their conversation stopped completely. Silence settled in again, but this time, it wasn't hesitant. It was waiting. And as four pairs of eyes slowly, almost instinctively, found each other in that dim, quiet room, someone finally took a step forward. The step forward was small. Barely noticeable. But it changed everything. No one spoke as the distance between us shifted, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough that the air felt tighter, charged in a way that made every breath feel deliberate. I pushed myself up slightly on my arms, no longer fully lying down, my body angled toward him now without pretending otherwise. He didn't move away. If anything, he leaned in just enough to meet me there. "Guess that answers that," he murmured, his voice low, steady, but there was something beneath it now. Not hesitation. Not uncertainty. Recognition. Across from us, I caught her watching. Not startled. Not upset. Just aware. Her gaze flickered between us and then to him, the man beside her, like she was waiting for something unspoken to finally be said out loud. But no one said it. Because we didn't need to. "You okay?" I asked, though I wasn't sure who I was asking anymore. She smiled faintly, a quiet, knowing expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Are you?" The question lingered, heavier than it should have been. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know how to. The truth sat somewhere between curiosity and something deeper, something harder to pull back from. Next to her, he exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to ground himself in something familiar. But even that felt different tonight. Everything did. We don't have to pretend this isn't something, he said finally, his voice cutting gently through the silence. My heart skipped, not from fear, but from the weight of hearing it said. Out loud. No one argued. No one laughed it off. The music in the background felt distant now, like it belonged to another room. All I could focus on was the space between us, how small it had become, how impossible it suddenly felt to ignore. Behind me, his hand shifted slightly, not touching, just hovering for a second before resting beside me instead. Careful. Controlled. But intentional. You ever think, he said quietly, that maybe we've all been standing right here for a while, just waiting for someone else to admit it first? I swallowed, my voice barely steady. Maybe we were hoping no one would. A soft breath of laughter, hers this time, but it wasn't light. It carried something else now. Something closer to surrender than amusement. That doesn't seem true anymore, she said. And she was right. Because the room had changed. We had changed. There was no more pretending this was just another night, no more hiding behind comfort or routine. Every glance held meaning now. Every small movement felt deliberate. Closer. Closer than we'd ever been. And as the silence settled one last time, thick, expectant, impossible to ignore, someone reached out. Not fully. Not completely. But enough that everything balanced on that single moment right before there was no turning back. The almost touch lingered. It stayed there, suspended between intention and restraint, like the room itself was holding its breath. My eyes dropped for a split second to his hand, to mine, close enough that the warmth between us felt real, even without contact. And then, a soft vibration broke the moment. It came from the table behind us. Subtle, but sharp enough to cut through everything. Her phone. No one moved at first. No one wanted to. But she turned, slow and deliberate, reaching for it like she was pulling herself back from something she hadn't fully stepped into yet. She started, but her voice faded as her eyes hit the screen. Something changed. Not dramatically. Not enough that someone outside the room would notice. But I saw it, the flicker. The hesitation. The way her shoulders tensed just slightly before she masked it. What is it? He asked, his tone careful now. She hesitated, then turned the phone toward him instead of answering. I couldn't see the screen, but I didn't need to. The shift in him said everything. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in recognition. Like whatever was there, wasn't unexpected. Just inconvenient. What? I asked, pushing myself up a little more now, the moment we were in bending into something else entirely. She glanced at me, then away. It's nothing, she said quickly. It wasn't nothing. Doesn't look like nothing, I replied, softer than I expected, but steady. Another pause. And then, quietly, she said, it's him. The word landed heavier than it should have. Him. Not the man standing next to her, but someone else. The air shifted again, but this time it wasn't just tension, it was complication. He still messages. I asked before I could stop myself. She gave a small, humorless laugh. Only when it's inconvenient. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Her partner exhaled slowly, glancing between her and the phone like he was measuring something invisible. You don't have to answer. I know, she said. But she didn't put it down. That was the twist, the quiet, unexpected pull of something unresolved. Something unfinished that had followed her into this room, into this moment. And suddenly, it wasn't just about us anymore. It was about what we were risking, and what we were all still holding on to. Behind me, I felt him shift again, closer this time, not hesitating like before. Not reckless. Just, certain. You ever notice, he said quietly, his voice near my ear now, How the past shows up right when you're about to do something you can't undo. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch his expression again. There was no doubt there now. No second guessing. Maybe it's a warning, I said. Or a test. Across from us, she locked her phone, her fingers lingering on it for a second too long before setting it down, face down this time. Deliberate. Final. I'm still here, she said softly, but clearly. Not to the message. To us. And that changed everything again. Because now the choice wasn't blurred by uncertainty. It was clear. Dangerously clear. The room felt smaller than ever, every glance sharper, every breath heavier. The lines we'd danced around all night weren't just thin anymore, they were gone. My hand shifted, just slightly. This time, it didn't stop short. And the second our skin finally, unmistakably brushed, someone at the door knocked. The knock at the door froze everything, just for a heartbeat. Then reality shifted in a way that made the air feel heavier, tighter, and almost impossibly close. Every glance, every hesitation, every stolen breath from the night before seemed to converge into that single moment. I turned my head slightly toward him, our fingers still brushing lightly on the cushion. He didn't pull away. Instead, he gave me the smallest nod, a silent acknowledgement that this, whatever it had become, was ours to own, even if just for a few stolen minutes. Across the room, she set her phone down, deliberately, her gaze flicking between her partner and us. There was tension in her posture, but also something else, acceptance. Not of what had happened, but of what she wanted to see unfold. It was daring, risky, and impossibly intimate all at once. Do we? He whispered near my ear, his breath warm, careful. I met his eyes fully, letting the hesitation fall away. We do, I replied, softly, letting the words settle between us like a promise. The room seemed to shrink around us as if it, too, was aware of the boundaries we were crossing. His hand shifted fully onto the cushion, close enough that my own fingers curled around it, our contact deliberate but still restrained. We weren't reckless yet. But the tension was unbearable, a delicate wire pulled tight. Across from us, they mirrored the closeness, her head resting just barely on his shoulder. The irony wasn't lost. Two couples, mirrored desire, subtle exploration of limits, and the kind of intimacy that only comes from years of trust and unspoken understanding. The knock came again, this time sharper, more insistent, breaking the spell. We all froze. She picked up the phone, her fingers hovering over the screen as though holding a secret. It's him, she admitted quietly, the one from before, the voice from the past trying to insert itself into this night. But her tone wasn't panic. It was calm, almost amused, as if she had already made a choice. The room shifted again, but differently this time. It wasn't just tension, it was clarity. The distraction of the past, the temptation of the unknown, faded against the undeniable pull of the present. Every glance, every touch, every breath confirmed it. We leaned in, finally closing the distance, a single, perfect moment of shared acknowledgement, and the energy in the room cracked open in a way that felt like both surrender and triumph. And just as our lips were about to meet, the door swung open. Not to interrupt, but to reveal someone we never expected, standing there with a knowing smile, turning the night upside down once more. The door had swung open, but instead of tension or interruption, it brought clarity. The figure standing there, a friend we hadn't expected, paused, smiled knowingly, and quietly closed the door again. No words were needed. The gesture was enough. The night belonged to us now. I leaned back slightly on the sofa, still feeling the warmth of his hand against mine. His thumb brushed lightly over my knuckles, slow and deliberate, and I realized how much we had both been holding ourselves back, how every glance, every hesitation, had been leading to this perfect stillness. Across the room, they shared a quiet laugh, eyes meeting in a way that didn't need words. It was soft, intimate, full of understanding. Even in their closeness, I felt connected, not apart, but part of something larger. We were four people, entwined in trust, in attraction, and in the kind of intimacy that grew from years of knowing each other, yet discovering something new in a single night. I let my head tilt toward him, brushing my cheek against his shoulder for the briefest moment. He leaned in slightly, just enough for me to feel the warmth of his chest against mine, and the tension that had been holding us all night dissolved into laughter and soft murmurs. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet joy of being exactly where we were meant to be, fully present, fully aware of each other. "You know," he said, voice low but full, "I think we just rewrote what tonight could have been." I smiled, feeling it deep in my chest. "Yeah. And I think I've been waiting for it longer than I realized." The room settled around us, the dim lights casting soft shadows that made everything feel intimate and safe. The music in the background played like a gentle heartbeat, steady and calm, and I realized that the night had given us something more than desire. It had given us trust, laughter, and the kind of closeness that left no room for regrets, only the sweetness of connection. We stayed like that, in a quiet bubble of warmth and presence, letting each other breathe and just exist together. Every glance, every touch, every quiet laugh reminded us that intimacy wasn't just a spark, it was a bond, deep and unshakable. And as the night drew on, I felt it settle over me like a promise. Not just of the night we shared, but of everything we would continue to share: moments, glances, laughter, and the quiet certainty that we were exactly where we belonged. In the soft glow of the lamps, our fingers intertwined, our hearts steady, I knew this was the kind of night that lingers, not for the rush, but for the closeness that stays.